morning, and welcome to the Cruise Roundtable. Of course, I'm your host, I Candy Andy. And as always, Mike Sadors will be joining us.
Hello, hello, hello. How are we doing today?
Excellent.
Thank you all for joining the crew. Not too much going on this week, though, right? I mean, it's been pretty slow. I mean, I guess if your name's Kyle, it's a good thing. Always helps, right?
I suppose he got a nice little thing, but then so did our friend Mr. Murray over in that one little Midwestern area.
Oh yeah, so I guess it's a Kyle and Kyler.
That is kind of weird, isn't it?
But so the goings on in the NFC this week. I mean, like I said, it hasn't been really too eventful. You had the Kyle Rudolph going to the Bucs. I mean, Tom Brady gets a new toy. I think that's going to help. We'll tackle that more later in the show as we dive into the Buccaneers. I know you got a lot of the NFC North transactions already coming up, so I'd like to touch on some of the goings on, I guess you'd say, of the other NFC teams. Neither Stout, Brian, or Jerry are unfortunately not with us today. Brian, hope your kid's feeling better. Mike, good luck with All-Stars this weekend. Jerry, hope you get on here soon. But anyway, so as of Friday, the Rams have signed USFL standout cornerback Luis Perez to a one-year deal. The Cardinals have signed wide receiver Victor Bolden and cut Jared Smoot. They also placed Mac Williams, tight end, on the PUP list. The Giants cut Corey Cunningham, signed defensive back Galvin Holston, and the Niners made a bunch of front office moves. And some guy named Kyler Murray lands himself a big deal. What are your thoughts on the whole Kyler Murray situation? I mean, it's a lot of money.
So it's interesting because, good for him. Unfortunately, because I don't get any of that, so boo. Like you were mentioning just a few moments ago, he takes one snap, he's guaranteed $160 million.
$160 million guaranteed. So all he's got to do is be there, essentially, day one, and it's a done deal. The Cardinals pay a man who fell apart down the stretch last season. I mean, his numbers are solid. He's never hit 4,000 yards, though, in his entire career. He's never been under double digits interceptions. His lowest was last year with 10. 24-10 isn't a bad ratio. 100.6 QBR. I mean, it's nothing to laugh at or be upset with, but is that worth what you're paying him? I mean, is the market broke right now?
And that's what we're also talking about now. It's getting to that point where you have some serious contracts, changing hands and stuff like that, where you're talking literally hundreds of millions of dollars for 1, 3, 5, 10 years, that kind of thing. In case in point, look at didn't somebody get a 10-year deal not too long ago worth practically $500 million?
Right.
Our friend in Kansas City?
No, I get it. I mean, and we've talked about it with the whole Tom Brady thing. If when does it end? Where does it stop? I mean, Brady goes into ownership. I mean, then what? Is he paying himself? I mean, where does it all? Where does this all end? I mean, the wide receiver market's ridiculous right now too.
Absolutely. We were actually talking about that a couple of months ago. We were talking about baseball. You had your older managers, older players, things like that, and that's just exactly how it's going to be. But when you get to that kind of when you can't pay your players, you have to actually start giving them part ownership of your team. I think there's definitely something that needs to be,
I mean, how does that work? You know what I mean? And then you got like Fox. Fox enters and agrees to a contract with Tom Brady. He's not even retired yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't know. I mean, it feels like it's monopoly money. Like it really holds no value. The salary cap is just, I don't know, a line on a piece of paper. You just write over it.
That is actually kind of an interesting question. Are you going to actually look to possibly shore up those, maybe remove some loopholes, Because you might say, look, we have a very small cap, space left. We're going to give you $17 this year, but we're going to supplement that with, a $50 million signing bonus. Whatever the case might be. It's just there's just certain things that you can and cannot do that, if you actually just flatline everything, say, okay, well, you can only make a certain amount. For example, let's say he was franchise tagged. What's the going rate for a quarterback under a franchise? A little over $20 million.
Well, now it's ridiculous, right? I mean, Murray's the second highest paid quarterback in the league.
And it's not necessarily just about Kyler Murray. If he gets that money, good for him, absolutely. Because it's not like he didn't work for it. All those, 2-a-days and all that, sweating in the 100-degree weather and lifting weights and, meetings and things like that, so at the end of the day, he, of course, deserves what he can get. However, generally speaking, what are you going to do when salaries are just so incredibly, outrageous that you are literally giving franchises, teams to some of your players?
No, I agree. And like I said, it's going to get to the point that where do they go from there? I mean, you can't have billion-dollar players, right? I mean, doesn't that breaks the balance? If your players are making $1 billion and your owners are worth $1 billion, who's in charge?
Right.
So, I mean, that deal just blows my mind. He's a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback, right? I mean, he's not someone you're like.
Well, if you kind of get it to that point, I personally would take him over Kirk Cousins.
Right.
I would personally take him over, honestly.
Baker Mayfield. No, I get it.
Oh, Baker Mayfield, and I don't want to say in a heartbeat, but let's just say yes. You would actually look at him as some of the more premier quarterbacks, but you would also have to take into consideration the scheme in which they play. So, for example, you can't necessarily plug him into a Tampa Bay scheme that's actually a little bit more, slightly more pass heavy than as opposed to running and things like that. But if you actually take him and put him in Baltimore, for example, the way that Lamar Jackson actually runs his team and stuff like that, I think there would be he would have some serious success, actually.
Lamar Jackson's still holding on for contract. I mean, this market right now is ridiculous. But I want you to look at Kyler Murray's numbers, right? In 2020, he almost passed for 4,000 yards. Mm-hmm. He was at 3,971. He had 2 more touchdowns, 2 more interceptions. So the ratio is pretty much the same. He improved a little bit this year, but his yardage went down, and he fell off late in the year. He was injured. I mean, you're giving this much money to someone that still has to prove to you that he is your future, that he is your franchise. It's just...
Yes, but...
Right, I get it, yeah, but now you're secure in the quarterback position for a couple years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But let's think about it like this now. You've actually kind of gotten away from that idea of the quarterback being, not only your franchise player, but somebody who's actually going to have to put up, again, 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, no interceptions, that kind of thing. However, think about it like this. Look at the whole grand scheme of things. You are literally looking at a player who is doing what he can to make sure that you win. The winning is the actual important part, because what does that actually do? That drives ticket sales, that drives, revenue from television, that drives, all of that stuff that actually goes towards the bottom line. And unfortunately, if you still look at it as just a game, you're missing out a little bit. And you can see where some of those big time money is coming from, just simply because it actually adds to their bottom line, which the NFL is a business.
Right. I understand it's a business, and I understand that, apparently you got to spend a shitload of money to make money. I get that.
A whole bunch.
But what's up, Lewis? But you're looking at a team that has done nothing. You have arguably the best receiver in the game. Done nothing. Now you have a quarterback making that much money, and you don't have money to spend elsewhere. You're tying your future to one player that can't win a jump ball.
This is where Packer Backer Prime would come in because he's got that same situation in Green Bay. And Green Bay does tend to do well with very little. However, it's another one of those yes buts. You also have some negative feelings in the great frozen tundra, maybe not necessarily right now, because of the fact that he's taking so much of that. And you can't afford to actually have any other players.
And that's exactly what it is. And you're going to see the same thing in Arizona now. Am I wrong? I mean, where are they going to get this money from?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know you can give signing bonuses and you can structure contracts so it's, incentive laden and all that other magic GM jargon, right? But money ends.
Maybe they pull another Bobby Bonilla of the NFL.
Ken Griffey Jr., right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
we are getting $1 million+ every year, basically until and so that really wouldn't be too bad of a deal. At least you know that you're going to have some sort of money coming in.
Right. I would love for a Cardinal fan to come on and let me know how they feel, but I don't know a single Cardinal fan. I've never ran into one. I mean, I don't know of any. But, I mean, they've got to be frustrated.
Leave him alone.
But anyway, why don't we get off this whole Kyler Murray topic? I mean, I just think it's a bad move. I think it's bad money, but obviously the corporation doesn't. The business side of it doesn't. He sells jerseys to the two fans that they have, I guess. I might be wrong. If you're a Cardinals fan, definitely jump on and let me know. And I agree, Keith. I think Arizona was forced to do that because of the quarterback market right now. He's a better option than Jimmy Garoppolo, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody is.
Garoppolo to Miami, maybe? I mean, what? Where does it go from there? But why don't we go to your area of somewhat expertise, right? We'll just go up to the north and let you go through some transaction there, get through the news, and let you get on your soapbox. Wrong button.
I figured at that point you should just let it roll.
You see these things? These are fat fingers.
You know what? I was going to say two things that are inappropriate. I'll wait till we're off air for that one. But
take it over.
The NFC North is actually relatively light this week, this month, whatever the case is. Unfortunately, which is kind of actually on the odd side. The odd part is the Bears didn't actually have a whole lot going on in this week. They're usually good for two or three different things, but for some reason they were very, very quiet. So we of course go to Cheeseville, Cheddarland, I don't know, whatever it's called. Green Bay Packers. They have actually a couple of transactions. So you have tight end Eli Wolf was released. Which is, okay, fine. Who else is Aaron Rodgers going to throw to? Let me see. They didn't sign tight end Sal Cannella. Sounds like a boxer.
From the USFL.
Mm-hmm.
He played really well.
There's quite a few of them that actually played really well.
Right.
And, of course, they signed wide receiver Christian Watson.
Their draft pick. He's a jumper, man.
Oh, yeah. Some of the wide receivers these days are just their athleticism reminds me of me.
Right. So, did you touch on the fact that Bacchiardi, I think is how you pronounce his name, David Bacchiardi, the tackle for the Packers, starting the season on the PUP list again. Landed last year, injured, Pro Bowl, offensive tackle. Guarder or defender or protector, however you will, of Aaron Rodgers is going to start on the PUP list. I don't know if that's a big deal or if that's a veteran move. I'm not sure.
Backatari.
I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. Their offensive tackle, left tackle.
What is it? Bacchiari, I believe.
Bacchiardi, that's it. You said it right.
But I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, granted, he is kind of getting up there, especially for offensive line in general. Look at what was his name, Andrew Whitmore,
Yeah.
with the Rams. He was 40 years old. Yeah, he basically looks like he's been rode hard, put away wet, that kind of thing. And so,
Wow.
well,
You're talking about washcloths. I understand.
absolutely. But is it smart? So, do you remember when the NFL actually their players union, of course, they made all kinds of different rule changes and things like that to where you have very little to no hard contact during the course of the week, especially during the season. And so you, of course, remember in high school, you remember, in college, whatever the case might be, where you're actually pounding each other every day, and then you actually kind of got used to that.
Yeah, I
And you remember when the NFL went to, of course, very little to no contact, and then players were dropping like flies. Because you need to be able to get your body kind of used to that type of, and I completely understand, especially in the age of CTE, things like that, you definitely need to be able to, limit some of the hits that you take. Bigger, faster, stronger might as well be the Olympics, but there's a strong possibility that may end up, unless he's actually physically hurt, of course, and physically unable to play. But
right.
he's kind of doing himself and really the Packers a little bit of a disservice just simply because he's not going to be in that game shape.
If he doesn't start the season off that list, he's going to miss the first 4 to 6 games automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big hit. If he can't start the season playing for the Packers up front, I mean, that's going to be huge.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, there's also the possibility that, they are trying to save him, but then by the time you are going to be back in game shape physically, and of course, with the pounding, the constant pounding and stuff like that, I think he's going to be he's physically unable to play. So that's probably why he's starting off.
Right.
So you go slightly north. Well, not from Green Bay, but you go to Detroit. So they placed nose tackle John Pennicini, reserve retired, and signed IDL interior defensive line Isaiah Buggs. So Detroit is actually doing some stuff too, and I think they are doing, well, if you recall that movie Moneyball starring Brad Pitt and all that, how they were taking players that actually fit better than the big money players and stuff like that. And I think Detroit, even though they may still have cap under the space under the cap, they're just taking players I think that actually fit their scheme just a little bit better, and I think that actually is going to work out a little bit better for Detroit. Hopefully not this year because the Bears are going to win the division, of course. But
with Detroit, we're going to get into this. I'm going to touch on this later, but they're at a point right now that they can build their roster around their scheme, right? As opposed to most teams in the NFL have to build their scheme around their roster, right? I mean, eventually, if you're a new coach going to a new team, you have to build your team, and then next year you can actually start get your impact on there. Whereas in Detroit, he did that last year. He had to build his team around build his scheme around what they had, and I think this year you're going to see them building their team around their scheme, which is something, like I said, we'll touch on later with the whole coach's corner. But it's definitely a different way to build and how to look at things. The Bucs went through that when they let go of McCoy. McCoy didn't fit a 3-4, so you got to move on. Even though he was the face of your organization for his entire career, you had to move on from him. So you're going to see a lot of things like that in Detroit here in the next year or two. So anyway.
Yeah, because of course you have to. There's two things, of course, you have to remember from the NFL. Number one, it is a business, and number two, it is a team sport. So you might have those players, for example, in Green Bay making $100 million over 2 years, or even like Kyler Murray making, potentially at minimum $160 million.
He's almost making what I make.
Almost. You know what? Taxes. Taxes will get you every time. But if by chance you were to, and it's just one of those things. You find those players that actually fit that scheme, and they do it well. They might not be spectacular. They're not going to give you 30 tackles for loss and things like that. but they are going to be able to fit that scheme to where somebody is going to be able to do, an individual standout type of a situation on any given play. It might be you, it might be me, it might be them.
Right.
And that leads to success. Unfortunately, in the NFC North, with the Bears going to be undefeated this year, it's going to give them a problem, though.
Yeah.
So finally, heading to Minnesota and the old Vikings. Now, the Vikings actually waived quarterback Nate Stanley, which is kind of a shocker because I thought he was going to be their number one. And there was who is that guy? I don't think I've ever heard of him. Some tight end or something like that? He didn't get traded?
He didn't get traded. He was a free agent signing, but he's most famously known for playing up there in the Great North, I guess you'd call it. He's heading south, but he didn't play in Minnesota last year either. So, but yeah, it's crazy. Crazy things happening right now. It's the slow time in the league, so coming up with topics to talk about is hard to come by. So when you get a gem like that, it's definitely something I'm going to be touching on in the NFC South.
Yeah, I guess if we have to, let's go to the South.
We even covered your Bears.
There's no teams. Unfortunately, there was nothing that happened this week.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like the regular season.
We mentioned that. I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear that, but we mentioned about 5 minutes ago the fact that there was nothing going on with the Bears. Now, the Bears.
No, I just figured I'd bring up the fact that they've done nothing again.
Except go into. I got two.
All right. NFC South, here we go. Let's talk about the big Panther news that everyone cares about, and it is, that's about it. That's all Carolina really has to go on right now. They're releasing a new helmet. It's actually pretty sharp. Like you said, it's a business, and this is going to sell merchandise, right?
That's Brady.
You don't have any real players selling merchandise. CMC is pretty much non-existent. Came back to camp, looks good. Hopefully he can stay healthy for the Panthers this season. He could be one of the top 3 backs in the league this year if he stays healthy. But, all right, big news out of Carolina right now is the fact that they're changing numbers. Baker Mayfield will be wearing jersey number 6, whereas their punter Hackler, who was formerly wearing 6, will be wearing 10. Rashawn Henry, who was formerly wearing 10, will now be wearing 13. Xavier Woods, who was signed to wear number 25, has switched to number 20. The big question really in Carolina, who's going to be the starting quarterback? And if it's Baker Mayfield, will he possibly have any chemistry with Robbie Anderson? I mean, is that bridge already burnt? I mean, Anderson didn't take too kindly to the fact that they brought Baker in. And then he's trying to backpedal, saying that he was just supporting his quarterback. I don't know if you can come back from that, really. And go ahead, Andy.
Well, I was just to say, if you're not a fan of them at 4-11, you can't be a fan of them at 5-12.
Right.
No, but I think there's going to be 2 things going to happen. First off, Baker Mayfield will probably end up being the starter.
Right.
You don't necessarily spend that kind of money, or at least the potential for that kind of money, unless you're going to be starting. Now, he may fall flat on his face because you're right. Chemistry is going to be a bit of an issue, and training camp might be just a few weeks away. But do you think he's going to be able to get at least 1, possibly 2 years worth of actual chemistry within 5 seconds?
Well, it's not even the fact that they've got to develop the chemistry. When you start off shaking your hand with sandpaper, you don't want to go back in and reach your hand out and shake that hand again, right? And I really feel like Anderson might have burnt his bridge there. And if Baker Mayfield's a man that's making you money, if Baker Mayfield's the man throwing you the ball that's giving your family paychecks, how do you cut that hand off? How do you say you don't want him in Carolina? How are you calling yourself a team player when that's your stance? I just don't get it. But
right. And really, at the end of the day, was Baker Mayfield really that bad? He's got edges. Everybody does. Idiosyncrasies, things like that. But, at the end of the day, maybe was he really that bad of a quarterback or even that bad of a teammate?
And that's the issue. That last part, I think, is the issue. Right?
That could be, but...
He had Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., right? two supposedly great wide receivers that are supposed to be stellar in this league, and rubbed them the wrong way. Was it the fact that he doesn't look to pass first and he's looking to make a name for himself first? I don't know. I don't know what the issue is in the locker room, but there's definitely something in the locker room that's not rubbing people right about Baker Mayfield. Because on the field, he plays all right. He won a playoff game with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I haven't heard anyone say that since the 80s, right? Maybe early 90s. But I don't know. He's definitely rubbed somebody the wrong way, and it's gotten around the league already. So I think this is his redemption story. And if he can improve his name, and, you might see something there.
Well, let me ask you this now. Let's say you have a Jimmy G sighting or whatever the case is in Carolina or whatever. Let's just say you take Jimmy G, you take Baker Mayfield, you
flip him? Jimmy G, I guess, Jimmy G's reputation is based off of 2 yards, if you ask some people, right? 2 yards shy of winning a Super Bowl, 2 yards shy of being a Super Bowl MVP, 2 yards shy of them signing or drafting Trey Lance. Do you take a risk on those 2 yards?
But scheme-wise, I think Baker Mayfield actually makes a little bit more sense out in San Francisco, for example, than he does in Carolina. Well,
Oh, I don't know. Carolina, I think, how do you say this? Baker Mayfield and Carolina make sense because they're both redemption projects.
Right.
They're both trying to rebrand themselves, if you will. Carolina went as far as to coming out with a new helmet this year to rebrand themselves. They're going to wear that probably 5-6 games this year. But you got Baker Mayfield, who's great on television commercials. Looks like he's a lovable guy. But there's something wrong. Something's not right there. And until he can prove that, hey, he's a good locker room presence, or he's, a good teammate, then you're going to have that stigma, and he's got to beat that. He's got to beat that now, and he's got to beat in Carolina. Hopefully he can turn some W's up in Carolina, just not against the Bucs. Hope he beats the Saints every time they play him. So, but anyway.
Some of the more telling things would be, of course, if they vote him in as one of the team captains. Are we talking about that?
Is that really going to be a team vote? If he wins the starting quarterback job based on his talent, is he the captain of the team? Automatic.
It's just telling the fact. If by chance, you're not voted as one of the team captains, for this year, this week, this month, whatever the case is, it's very telling.
Right. No, I agree.
There's some sort of an issue with some of your teammates, or at least a majority of your teammates, but that's just a tip of the iceberg. It's actually the tip of that iceberg. That's what she said. Anyway.
All right. Let's go to New Orleans, shall we? Saints put defensive end Marcus Davenport on the PUP along with Mr. Slancy, good old Michael Thomas, listed on the PUP. This is a big deal right now for New Orleans because wide receiver corps is listed as one of their strengths going into this season. You signed Landry, you draft Olave, however you say his last name. What will Landry's role be now in New Orleans? Is he going to be a number one? Is Olave good enough to be a number two already? If Thomas doesn't come back right away, he's not going to be able to play for the first few games. You got Kamara facing 6-game suspension potentially due to his battery issue at the Pro Bowl. The first few weeks of the season could be rough in New Orleans, right?
So Olave, you're right. It's very difficult. I just have to hear him, pronounce it properly, and then of course we can go from there. But I would definitely put him as a soft number two until you actually see him play. He may actually end up being your number one. There are certain rookies and things like that are just so above and beyond that they're going to be a major impact.
Well, I agree.
He'd be one of those players.
I totally agree with you there that he could step in to be the number one. The problem I see there is chemistry. Same thing in Carolina. You have Jameis Winston throwing the ball to who? I mean, you've got Landry, who's new. Olave, who's new. Their tight end is new. Thomas has no chemistry with Winston because he was out last season. And now he's starting off on the PUP list. Now, again, this could be a whole situation where they're just trying to save a veteran from having to go through the, first few weeks of this preseason and whatnot. But it's not something you can feel good about being a New Orleans fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, again, that's another one of those yeah buts. Because if you remember any of those hard knock shows and things like that, you see what a major struggle it was for a lot of the rookies and stuff, because they have to, first off, become a member of that team. So they, of course, have to, make sure that, and a rookie is a rookie. Hey, Rook, carry my bags. Hey, Rook, you're buying dinner this week, whatever the case might be. So you still have that whole, I got to prove the fact that I belong here type of deal.
Right. What's up, Johnny? Host the NFL edition on Bucks Report. Thanks for having me on this morning on Cup of Ray with you guys. Let me ask you a question while you're in the audience here. What do you think of the whole situation in New Orleans with Jameis Winston having essentially 4 new receivers to throw to, with Thomas being back this year if he comes back off a PUP? That's the issue for me, is New Orleans is going to be facing some uphill climb, right? I don't know. If Kamara's out, their whole offensive game plan changes. You lose that whole, safety valve for Jameis Winston, who's been known to get trigger happy when he's behind.
Yes, but think about it. Because the fact that you have very little to no film, besides, of course, college film and stuff like that, or even, some of the others, you have very little to no film on, for example, Olave, whichever. Yeah. So I would certainly say for the first, several weeks, several months, whatever the case is, he's going to be just an absolute terror, because they're not going to know how to necessarily defend him. If you happen to be within your division, second game, of course, is going to be a little bit different now that they know how to, of course, game plan. So I think there's going to be a certain level of success, especially with him, to go from that solid, from that soft number 2 to a potentially solid number 2, maybe even like a soft 1.
The issue, though, is, again, chemistry. You've got no chemistry in New Orleans. Jameis Winston is a great talent. I'm not going to bash Winston. Great arm. Hard to tackle. Moves in the pocket well. But the issue with Winston is he has hero complex. Chemistry with Winston, don't worry me. Cam Jordan does, as long as the defense... Oh, yeah, I said that last week, that the Saints defense somehow loses 2 safeties, 2 of their starting safeties, pick up Matthew, and come out smelling like roses again. They're going to be one of the top 10 defenses in the league going into the NFC South, which honestly is going to help them, because there's only one offense you got to worry about there. Let's be honest. You don't have to worry about Carolina's offense. We've already established that. You got Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold going with essentially DJ Moore, because there's no one else there. McCaffrey might not be healthy week 2. Then you go into Atlanta. We'll cover that. We'll cover that here in a little bit, but Atlanta's nothing to worry about. They're putting in a new scheme. They got a new OC that's going to be bringing them an offense they're trying to get up into the top 20 of the league. They weren't even in the top 20 last year. They had the fewest plays 20 yards or more. They had a couple exceptions. You had the Calvin Gage catch against the Niners. You had Kyle Pitts one play last year that apparently gave him Pro Bowl accolades. But anyway, so you don't have anything to worry about in the NFC South except for Tampa. And you only play them twice. Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, but was he 2 yards away?
But I'm being serious. That defense is going to look even better. The Saints defense is going to put up staggering numbers because they're playing the Falcons twice and the Panthers twice. And guess what? The Bucs are going to reap the same awards, because the only offense they really got to worry about in the South is New Orleans. And if Jameis Winston can develop any kind of chemistry with those 4 receivers, they could sneak in to be the top team in that NFC South.
Yeah, but think about it like this now. If you have the Saints that are going to have their defense, you have several different defensive players that are actually, you're starting to really emerge in some serious star power right there. You get that giving Tom Brady some happy feet. You see what the Giants were able to do with Tom Brady when he gets happy feet.
Yeah, but Bucks also had a guy top 5 guard in the league last year in Shaq Mason. You also have a top 2 tackle in the league. I mean, the Bucks offensive line is no slouch. Donovan Smith seems to finally be coming into his own, and you add a good blocking tight end like Kyle Rudolph, which we will touch on here in a little bit. I mean, that offense is going to be formidable.
But you also need to be able to have that Kyle Rudolph, because of course Gronkowski, of course, left, and who knows, how that offense is going to end up shaping up. But if you really have that defense, it's going to be. I'm telling you, it might be a little bit. I'm not saying this is the Saints' year. I'm just saying that you definitely have a plus side.
Oh, I agree.
50% for sure.
I agree that it could be the Saints' year, and I say that kind of pessimistic, really. I mean, I don't want that to happen. I'm a Bucks fan, but to be honest, it could be the Saints' year. All it's going to take is that chemistry to build on that offense, and they're going to be good.
Sure.
You have arguably a top 4 running back in the league right now, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if he misses 6 games, that's going to kill you.
It very well may, because if you're actually looking at, especially in the beginning, because don't they have some of the better, gooder games, certainly in the first 4 weeks?
Oh, yeah. And then that's what it's going to come down to, is how the Saints, if Kamara gets suspended, if Thomas is on PUP, if Davenport remains on PUP, you're going to be clawing, right? The Saints are going to have to claw up those first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. But if they can do that and come away 500, they're going to be in the hunt the entire season. But
that is true.
shut up, Jerry.
Wait a second. He's got a valid point here. You got a solid player, but definitely a solid number 2.
Yeah, definitely a solid number 2. So let's go to Atlanta. Right? Eddie Goldman signs with the Atlanta Falcons. That's a big signing. Wait. What? Eddie Goldman has retired from the Atlanta Falcons. He signs on July 11th, and he's like, I see what's going on here. I just lost out to Cordero Patterson. I'm going to retire. I mean, how do you... That was a big signing. That was a big move for Atlanta. He would shore up that defensive line.
Yeah, bud.
Right? He's like...
If you actually read what Tom Thayer had actually written about, he basically...
I'm shocked that Tom Thayer can write.
Surprisingly enough. But, as offensive lineman, being the
smartest,
most athletic, and, usually best looking.
Most predictable. But anyway.
Exactly. You know what you get. Brilliance, good looks, athleticism.
Right.
He basically rolled him over the coals on that one, basically saying, you know what, there's obviously a lack of commitment there, because you see what happened.
Is it a lack of commitment, or it's I see where this is going? What? Why would you want to retire in Atlanta?
Everybody goes to retire in Atlanta or in Indianapolis.
But I mean, he moved to Atlanta, signed a contract, moved to Atlanta, and retired. He didn't bother even putting on a chin strap. He was like, all right, I'll sign the... You know what? Ink was still wet on the paper. He's like, I'm done. This team is going nowhere.
I see what you're saying, but I think...
We didn't even want to bring marshmallows to that dumpster fire.
Actually, that's true enough right there. However, even when he was with the Bears in and of themselves, okay, so you know how you had, of course, Akeem Hicks, who, even though he was injured on more than one occasion, was a major impact when he was, of course, playing. He would be able to take 1 or 2 offensive linemen, and he actually gave you production. When was the last time you actually heard, Eddie Goldman, player of the game?
I don't know, but he's got my vote already.
Eddie Goldman having an impact.
I love the fact that he's like, all right, I'll sign. No one else wanted him. Let's be honest. No one else was beating down the door for services of Eddie Goldman. But that shows you how far Atlanta has fallen when he's like, yeah, but no.
all the tools to be like, name it. And for everything from a Sue to, even like a Sap-esque type of player to where he had that type of talent. But it was just one of those things where it's almost like he just did enough to be able to go year to year to year. So,
Yeah.
Atlanta long-term rebuild, huh? Now, the funny thing about Atlanta being a long-term rebuild, they've been saying that since really 1865.
You know what? I got to disagree with Johnny here. I honestly have them behind the Panthers. And the only reason for that is their starting quarterback. I mean, Marcus Mariota, I don't think is the answer. I don't think he's your, football messiah, if you will. I just think he's going to hold the job this year, and they'll be looking again next year as they pick number 2, number 1 in the draft. But anyway, the other news in Atlanta is the fact that they put linebacker Deion Jones on the physically unable to play list as well. And oh my God, do you see what I see? He did, right? Did you see that? Let's do it again. What's up? And he's gone. All right, one more time. Stop it. What's up, Jerry?
What's going on?
It's funny you come in for the good segment of the show.
Oh, what, the NFC South?
Yeah. But how you been?
Oh, you know.
Well,
Same old.
you're just in time for me to go into the Bucks.
Awesome.
I
That's all I can think about, you know.
So, what's been going on in Tampa Bay these days? Bucks finally signed their second-round pick, Logan Hall. They did place rookie corner Don Garner, the undrafted free agent from South Dakota, on the PUP list, as well as Sedarius Hutchinson, a last year undrafted free agent tackle out of South Carolina. He's back on the PUP. It's his first year, but he spent all last year on injury reserve, so it's basically his rookie season. The only undrafted agent or undrafted unsigned draft pick the Bucks have left is Cade Otton, who was just cleared to actually begin football activities, so it should be coming in the next few days. Speaking of tight ends, there's a rumor. I don't know where I heard this rumor, but it's a pretty good rumor that the Bucks give Tom Brady a new toy. And what do you think of this, Andy? I mean, you mentioned it earlier in the show.
First off, we have to work on your context. Well, the one guy from that one place went to that other place. Big deal. Let's move on. Now he's actually going to be quite the pickup, certainly, because he does a little bit of that blocking thing we talked about. And he does a little bit of that catching thing. So
he's no Kittle, but definitely
he's not the slowest guy either.
No.
He's taking the place for guess who?
I don't know if he takes the place for Gronk, but he takes that leadership role in the locker room.
I was thinking Antonio Brown.
He's going to go crazy and leave the game?
So I mean, Andy, Jerry, what are your thoughts on Kyle Rudolph going down to Tampa to team up with Brady and have a shot at actually retiring with the ring this year?
I don't know, man. It's going to be the same.
There's the color commentary we've been missing.
All right.
As always, he's gonna be on the team with Brady, and they're gonna destroy everybody during their easy season, and then they're gonna go get spanked on the NFC West.
Bucks have one of the hardest opening schedules in the league this year.
Because they start off with the Cowboys.
Playoff team.
You can't call the Cowboys a playoff team.
They didn't make the playoffs?
Huh?
They didn't make the playoffs?
They shouldn't.
But they did.
By default.
But anyway, adding Kyle Rudolph adds depth to that tight end room. I was on Couple Ray this morning with Johnny Dean and Ray Kennedy, and I brought up the fact that the Bucs still have another tight end that no one talks about in Cody McElroy. He's a good receiving tight end, but someone's going to be outside looking in, and that's someone they move to clear up some space for, I don't know, maybe a Carlos Dunlap or Carl Nassib coming back to Tampa to give us some depth on the edge of that defensive line. I mean, that's a strong possibility that the Bucs aren't done in that area. They're going to build more as the season goes on. They have some cap room. They're going to clear up some cap with re-signing some people, restructuring some deals, and allow some money for the regular season because you got to have that injury money. You got to have that in case shits happens, money during the season. But other than that, Bucs going to win the whole thing. It is what it is. And you're right, Johnny. The Bucs have the second. I thought it was the second. It might be the third toughest schedule in the league this year, and that's because they won their division. Usually, your division leading teams are going to face your toughest schedule. The Bears had that happen in was that 2000?
Right.
Right? Didn't the Bears go to the Super Bowl 2010, 9, something like that?
Sure, we'll go with that.
I don't know. But anyway, and the Niners were 2 yards away from winning the Super Bowl. Anyway, so we got a new segment coming up, right? We
wait. You're going to be throwing some major shade right there, and then you're going to not expect some sort of a retort?
Yeah, that's how I do things.
Indeed. All I know is, being in the NFC South is probably, well, you remember, of course, when you first started playing football, 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade, stuff like that. It's just like that. It's just like a really, really good, number 1 ranked high school college team playing against junior high kids. And Tom Brady, of course, is their grandfather.
Right. But I mean, let's be serious right now.
Can I still be Andy?
You have one of the weakest divisions in the league, right? I mean, let's call a spade a spade. The Bucs are in probably the weakest division in the league. Any arguments there? I mean, I rival them with that.
Yeah, the East is getting better just because of Philadelphia.
So you have them going in the weakest division in the league. They're gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah, I got two words for that.
They're gonna make the playoffs. Am I wrong? The Bucs will make the playoffs. Tell me I'm wrong.
They absolutely will because of the fact they're in a relatively weak division.
Okay.
So New Orleans, as we kind of sort of expect, could.
It's going to be a battle.
Yeah.
Even if New Orleans wins the division, the Bucs are still going to be in on a wild card because
they're going to have 12 wins
all year.
Yeah.
So, they lost to New Orleans twice, and New Orleans has to match them to win the division.
No, I get it. That's my point exactly. So all the Bucs got to do is make the playoffs. You make the playoffs, and anything can happen.
And you have to play the NFC West, and you get stomped.
That segment of the show is over.
Who'd you lose to last year?
We already had the NFC West talk. You missed it because you were sleeping.
Well, I'm sorry.
But
my son let me sleep. Okay.
But anyway, seriously, though, we do have a new segment of the show we're going to introduce today. It's basically football for dummies, instructed by dummies, right? I mean, I do have some coaching experience. Andy's played for a couple of years. Jerry's Jerry. So, but we're just going to basically dive into basic defensive packages and explain what they are, things of that nature. So, giving no further ado, give you Coach's Corner.
Fun fact, that's actually Mike with hair.
It's not. I'm way bigger than that. And I don't mean muscle-wise. A little bit of the obesity side of things. But anyway, so what we're going to do with this is basically touch on what the difference is between certain defenses and things of that nature. So let's look at this right here. This is your basic 4-3 base defense.
We're going to have it prepped.
What's that?
The way to have it prepped.
Or 3-4 defense, sorry. This is your basic 3-4 defense. I clicked the wrong slide. But we talked about this earlier in the show, right? A new team starts out building their team around their scheme, right? You got a new coach coming in to an old team. He's got to, I don't know how you describe it. You got to shape your scheme around your personnel, right? So Detroit last year had to do what they had to do with what they had. So that they ran. Detroit's more of a 4-3 defense, whereas where'd it go? I don't know where you put it, Andy, but we're just gonna say basically how you look at a defense is your 4 is your lineman. You got a defensive end, a tackle, and a defensive end. So you're going to draft accordingly. You're going to draft to what you build, right? Am I wrong? You're laughing, but I'm being serious. It's the difference between.
We're definitely have to make sure that we have different slides for different.
Yeah, that was definitely out of order. But anyway.
But if you look at, for example, of course, got to bring up the '85 Bears naturally because it was just one of the greatest teams ever. But anyway,
they ran a South.
You had that 46 defense. And so, really, what you were basically doing is you were overloading the offensive line. So there was always going to be one, possibly even two, well, usually one, free defensive roamer, really. And that's why they were always, except unfortunately with the Dolphins, they didn't have that kind of success. But you were overloading the offensive line, so you always had somebody that was disrupting the interior, the quarterback, the running back, things like that. That was your 4-6 defense. So basically, you have those guys taking care of your offensive line, and then you have all these roamers that can go and do what they do. That's why Otis, Wilbur Marshall, and people like that were so successful during that campaign. So, and then of course you had, for example, the Tampa defense.
Right. No, I agree with that. And what I'm saying is so you start your base defense. But NFL teams nowadays only run their base defense, 20, 30% of the time? I mean, you're switching to a nickel, you're switching to a dime. And a dime in a 3-4 is different than a dime in a 4-3. A dime in a nickel in a 3-4 is different than a nickel in a 4-3. So what a nickel is in a 4-3 is you're taking out a linebacker and you're putting in a defensive back, right? A dime in a 4-3 is you're taking out a lineman and a linebacker and putting in 2 defensive backs. So you're going from a 4-3 to like a 4-2-5 or, and the way the numbers work, like I was saying earlier, is 4 or your front is your first number. So if you're in a 3-4, you've got 3 down linemen. If you're in a 4-3, you got 4 down linemen. 2 in a 4-2-5 is your linebackers. 2 is, middle in your roamer or middle in your ranger or whatever you want to call them. Yeah. And then 5 is the back end.
Right. But if you also have, for example, let's say you have a player like pick a dominant player. You can even say like a Hicks, for example, who would actually clog up that middle. Vita Vea, for example, he clogs up that middle. You've got several different players that actually can clog up that middle that you could conceivably go with a 3-4, a 3-man front versus the 5 offensive linemen, because then you're congesting that area so much. That's why you have your roamers that come in and they can even do things like take away the slant. They can take away your any post, because now you're actually pressuring that quarterback in order to be able to actually get that ball out of his hands quicker.
Right.
And then if you have the personnel for that, fantastic. If you have the personnel for a 4-man front, then of course everything behind you.
No, I understand completely. Now, Jerry, you played wide receiver collegiately. And my question for you is when you line up as a wide receiver and you look out at a nickel, does that change your route tree? Does that change, where your move is going to be made? I mean,
it all depends on who's in the area of where you're going to be going, right? So, if I'm lined up, slot out to the side by myself, I'm not seeing the nickel. The nickel is mostly on the other side of the field where the other receivers are. So it doesn't bother me at all, right? So I'm only really worried about, obviously, the corner that's right up on me, or the safety that comes over on me, or sometimes a backer if I'm on the inside.
Right.
I'm worried about that, and then I'm worried about who's over the top of me. That's what's going to change my route tree.
Right. And here's what I was talking about, right? You're in a nickel
I don't
14.
necessarily think that's a-
No, that definitely makes sense. Your nickel back's going to shade the strength of your formation or the strength of your key receiver usually. So your nickel's going to shade too. But so more than likely you've been on the backside running a decoy, right? Trying to keep the defense off.
In this scenario, I played wide. Yeah.
So,
That's my position.
but so with the 4-2-5, which is your basic nickel defense, you're just stopping the 7 to 10 yard pass. You're not looking to let anything deeper than 7 yards. And then that's usually what you'll see on 2nd and long, 3rd and long. You're not going to see base defense much in the NFL, and it's crazy to me that they draft around that. Does that make sense? They build their team around a base that they're only in 20, 30% of the time. I mean, you understand what I'm trying to say, or?
So
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're still getting guys that are meant for that position and have that skill set because that's what they've been playing for their whole life. So
Yeah.
you're fitting guys to a mold of, okay, when I go into nickel, I want the guy who's used to playing that position in nickel.
Right.
And so you go and get your nose tackle or, and you build around a 4-3 or a 3-4 or whatever because you want that guy with the skill set for that position.
No, I understand.
Nowadays,
Up front, 100% that makes sense.
Yeah.
In your front 4 or front 3, whatever you run, that makes sense because it's different skill sets for those positions. But you got a guy like, I don't know, let's say Keanu Neal, right? We talked about him last week, how he plays versatile. He's a safety, but he was a linebacker in Dallas. He was a failed linebacker in Dallas, but he played that position for the Dallas Cowboys. That's a brilliant move for Tampa, I believe, because you're in that defense more times than in your base. You're not going to be in your base 3-4, but 20% of the time.
They're never going to get a better safety than Chris Conley. So
yeah, love that.
Stop trying.
So if you're actually looking at that particular defense, and actually, Jerry, you touch on that. That's perfectly. You have a guy who's used to a particular position. So, for example, like Mike, he was always the starting left out.
Right.
So he's used to that position. So now you just actually have to build around that. So if you go from a nose to a defensive tackle, you're essentially looking at the same thing. It's just going to be gap, your gap presence. So what about if you have like a Robert Quinn or even like a Khalil Mack, for example? Those kind of guys, or even some of the guys from the Rams who actually tend to go from one side to the other. They kind of shift from one side to the other. Then you have those kind of weird athletes that are fast and they get like a Matthew, yeah. Matthew, for example.
Well, with
instinctively are always around that ball, but there's supposed to be a defensive. Wait, are you a safety? No, are you a linebacker? Huh? So they're like those hybrid type of players that actually can go from one side to the other, even
right.
play back.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what kills me is how players like that get lost in the draft. You don't see teams going out and be like, this guy's first round pick. I need him because he can fill 2 needs. He can play the slot corner and he can be my linebacker and dime package. Right? They kind of slip through and you see them slide into the 3rd and 4th round. But anyway, the Khalil Mack comparison is very intriguing to me because when you mention him, he's not scheme defined. I think he could play defensive end. I think he could play outside linebacker. I think he's just one of those talents that fits either, right? I mean, he's a liability in pass coverage, I guess. But if you're playing a 3-4, one of your backers is usually coming off the edge. I mean, every time, every snap. So, I don't know.
Not to mention the fact that you have those delayed blitzes where you have like DB coming in from way out over here. Now that's all fine and dandy unless you actually call the wrong defensive play on that particular. Oh well, it's just going to be a quick little handoff. Well,
So
but then it's just one of those things. So, but that's just basically the nickel. So maybe hopefully next week we can actually touch on more of the dime or the 50-cent piece, something like that, whatever the case might be, that we can actually break it down a little bit better.
you see
Or the good side.
what's that, Jerry?
Or you can touch on the good side of the ball.
Right.
No, the offense is going to be its own thing, especially offensive line play.
But when you look at the dime package, I'm 100% being serious with this. Is you're only going to really see that on your 2nd and 10, 2nd and 12, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. You're not going to see that on your 2nd down, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 7. That's what I was trying to get into, is that your nickel package is more for your 2nd and 7 to 10. You know what I mean? And then your dime is late game heroic defense where you're trying to stop a team from doing big things.
But then you also have variations. Yeah, variations just simply because, okay, so you have 3rd and 30, cool. But then you also have like a 1, like a 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, that kind of thing where, are you going to just bring everybody straight up to the front? What about if you do a little dinking, diving, that kind of a throw? Even let's say Jerry rolling in for a slant for, even 6 or 8 yards.
Right. And then
have to actually get that guy, even though you have everybody on the front.
But again, that comes into the fact that these teams are drafting for a base defense, and they're in that base defense 20 to 30% of the time. And when you try to establish your identity as a defense, I think it should be based on position group as opposed to scheme of defense. See what I'm saying? Whereas,
I think you see that around the league anyway. I mean, nobody's going out there and going, I have to run 20 plays of 4-3 so that I am a 4-3 defense.
But that's my point.
That's what you're basing your packages off of. Okay, I'm 4-3 now. I'm going to move this guy over here though, and actually it'll becomes, whatever.
And that's my point exactly. Is that I think you're going to see teams straying away from that mindset to where they're not building a team based on a scheme. They're going to start building a team based on talent and let that talent dictate what they play.
Right. But that's where the variation comes from. You got a base 4-3 where you have 2 tight ends, and you've seen on film that these 2 tight ends, one tends to always be, your receiver, of course, to the strong side. Which is the strong side? You have two tight ends. Oh, it's going to go here, or it's going to go here, or it's going to go here. So that's where your variation comes in. You see 2 tight ends in any particular instance. Let's say they run a particular play on 3rd and 3, 2 tight ends. Oh, okay. So now that's where we have a variation of our nickel package where, you bring in an extra DB or you bring in an extra safety.
I mean, because of the way that the offenses have evolved over the years, the 4-3 goes back, right, to 3 yards, cloud of dust offense, right? That's not the case anymore. So the way that the offenses that have evolved, really the only number that you can pay attention to in a base defense call out is the first one. Because that's the only one that holds true. Like if you look at the Niners, when the Niners play, every single play there's 4 down line. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the scenario. So that's always going to be there. So they're a 4 defense, basically. The 3 will change with DBs and everything else. And a 3-4, it's the same thing. The 3 down linemen are always going to be there. Even if they're in a dime prevent everybody back. And so it's really the second number is the one that's irrelevant now.
Well, yeah. If go ahead, Andy.
Well, you say that's actually a good point because even with those types of variations, how many times over the last couple of years have you seen an interior lineman drop back into coverage? Oh. Because you have one of those linebackers who are actually going to the outside, so you need to clog that middle. So what do?
100%, and that's again where you're going to see teams start building around talent instead of around scheme.
Like those kids from Georgia, the ones that were running 4.3 40s.
Right.
At 6'5", 300+ pounds, that's the kind of athlete that you absolutely can make a serious impact. You start as a 4.3, next thing you know, you shift into a 3.4 because he's dropped back into coverage and is covering.
Right. Speaking of 4.3 40s, did anyone see Jackson just dash by in the background there? That was unbelievable.
Normally he comes crawling on all fours into the road.
Anyway, Gentlemen, it's 10 o'clock. Actually, it's 10:05 because someone got winded and ran late and messed up the whole slideshow. I take the blame for that one. But next week, I hope we have more beautiful faces other than mine on here. Maybe we'll get Brian in. Well, that doesn't help. Stout. I guess we're stuck with me.
Two fails in a row.
But hopefully we see you next week, Jerry. You can come on with some Niners content finally. Let's try to line up some guests. So hopefully we can bounce off each other better than we have today. But until next week, please like, share, and subscribe. Jerry, you got anything?
No, man. Go Niners.
Eye candy?
Yep.
All right,
I
then.
think we can all agree that the Cowboys.
See you all next week.